fire. And I just said, did they just explain like twice in 60 seconds to us?
Isn't that when there's a really bad barbecue joke?
Yeah, I'm going to be fried. And then there's a really odd joke where Stallone is undressing a guy and Rob Schneider's like, we don't have time for this.
Yeah. Rob Schneider felt odd in this movie.
Well, do you know they wanted Joe Pesci?
No, I did not know that.
Stallone wanted Joe Pesci in this movie. Joe Pesci turned it down. And Stallone figured, hey, I like that guy Schneider from Demolition Man. He was funny. Because I like Schneider in Home Alone, too. I liked him in Demolition Man. I even liked him in Surf Ninjas. This one, though, he was just thrown in to throw bits out. And so he threw that in with this humor. And this movie, though, is just such a weird mishmash. And another thing about Judge Dredd, I don't understand in any of these movies, right, how flying cars work in any scene. So in anything, Fifth Element, right? All the flying cars.
Back to the Future, I don't understand even in Star Wars, like, where's the road? Why can't you go under people? Like, what are the rules of a flying car?
And even in Aquaman, it's the same thing, but underwater. So I don't know how traffic laws work in these movies. I just have to say, I have to get it out. And Attack of the Clones, too. There's no stop signs. People are just flying wherever they want. I don't get it. And in a world that's so poor, so are there flying cars? Did you read the comics? Are there all these flying cars in a world? So
there was a few flying cars, but I remember the cars in the comics being more grounded. Because if you were in Heavenly Heights, right? If you were Rob Schneider and
that was a good pun. The cars were more grounded.
Yeah, you like
the flying cars were more grounded.
But if you were in Heavenly Heights, why wouldn't you just fly away in a car? That's what I'm saying. Like, just fly away in your magic car if you're in these slums, but they don't. And that doesn't make, like, if I had a flying car, I would just go wherever I wanted to. There'd be no rules.
Yeah, I didn't get that, right? And then they had the bit about the recycled thing. The recycled, I actually read an article about
recycled food is good for the environment and okay for you.
I mean, that's a bit right there. I mean, that's a bit I appreciated. I mean, someone wrote that, and I dug it. Yep. So I read an article saying that the 2012 Dredd got the character of Dredd correct.
Yeah, they nailed it on the nose.
But the Dredd 96 Judge Dredd captured the world better.
Yeah, it captured the world and the look.
And so they made a pretty interesting point, but I know that the 96 Dredd captures the look, and there's a lot of colors. There's a lot of, a lot of mutants.
It looks like a comic book.
Clones. Oh, no, for sure. And I think the production design on Judge Dredd was solid. But I really like Dredd 2012, just they shot in South Africa, and I love the kind of brutalist architecture, the very squared rectangle. I loved the feel of the Dredd world, felt real to me, and I like that more.
Here's what I think. I think that the character Dredd fits better into the Dredd 2012 world than the character Dredd fits into the Judge Dredd 1995 world. Like, although it's closer to the comic books in 95, the world it lives in, the character doesn't sit well. Like, the Judge Dredd character wouldn't have visually worked. Like,
it is 95. I'm sorry, guys. People are going to be losing their minds.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that it wouldn't have worked to have that character in that colorful palette. But John Wagner, who was the head writer for Judge Dredd, he said of 95, he says, I hated the plot. It was Dredd pressed through the Hollywood cliche mill, a dynamic power struggle that he held little connection to the character we know and love from the comics. And then he said about 2012 Dredd, he said, it's a high-octane, edge-of-the-seat stuff and gives a fair representation of Dredd than the first movie. So it's very much just like, we didn't do a good job, and then we did a good job.
The 2012 Dredd is very, almost nihilistic.
Yeah.
It's a brutal film. And
also, I think that what worked for me for the Dredd versus Judge Dredd, so in 95, I felt like that was just a typical movie. There's like, here's your first act, second act, third act, and here's what we need to go with. And Dredd was very much a day in the life of. It was just kind of like, almost like a Kevin Smith movie of a Judge Dredd movie, right?
Just a day in the life. He could have gone anywhere else.
Yeah. And they just chose that. Well, let's go here, rookie, and we'll do this thing. And I feel like that would be so ripe for a franchise, and it could just be a week. Right? Every movie's just another day. But I think that for this like police officer, the cop life is you go and you check in, and there's this crazy adventure every day, maybe not, and then you go home at night, and that's your story. And I feel like that's what Dredd gave us, and that's why it worked so well.
And what I liked about 2012, so Dredd, I mean, in today's climate, I wonder what people's reaction to Dredd would be coming. I know it's a comic book, but just kind of the cop walking around doing all that. But I did not like Stallone's character because of his hubris. Like, we're 200 meters away, but we only need 300. I am the law. I'm just going to arrest you for no reason. It felt very pompous almost in its execution.
Yeah.
But
it almost felt like he was like a RoboCop kind of thing. Here's the rules. Yeah. And the human aspect of like judgment call is going to be turned off.
And in 2012 Dredd, he does make judgment calls. He doesn't arrest certain people because there's better priorities. Just you better get out of here. But what I liked about him is they talked about how 500 million people are in this city, and only 6% of the calls are. So they only tackle 6% of all police calls in the city per day. So Dredd is going around causing all this chaos, but there's still so much chaos going out around him. And I find that interesting, how he's just fighting a losing battle, but
and well aware of it.
Yeah, and well aware of it. He just keeps moving forward. And I think that's a very interesting concept, at least to me. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, for a certain extent, that's what I think some police officers feel like.
Yeah, and he just
like I have a friend who's a detective with the Toronto police, and she was doing this investigation, and I was like, it was quite an interesting investigation. She told me a little bit about it, and I was like, oh, are you going to get them? And she goes, well, we're probably not going to get them. Like they know the system, and it was actually a band of gypsies, which is funny.
Bare knuckle boxers.
Yeah, essentially. But she goes, they know the system, they know how to work in and out, how to go skate right close to the line, and then get away. And so it was kind of like this idea of like, we're doing our job, we're doing our best, but it is a losing battle. But just because we're losing the battle doesn't mean we don't fight it.
And I also like the humanity inside. So inside of this cell block in Dredd, I like that they take time. So Olivia Thirlby Anderson murders a dude, and later on they go to someone's house, and that is the man's wife that she had killed earlier. You get shots of children. You get shots of people just going about their day, or people helping, or kids being scared. And I thought the bad guy in this movie, Mama, was almost relatable about her story about working her way up. A way she protected. Sorry, go ahead.
Since you understand how she gets there.
Yeah, it's a very clear understanding of why she gets there. And I also liked how she spared Anderson. And I love that line when Wood Harris, who's awesome in The Wire, I wish he would have gotten a bigger role in this, but when he has her in an elevator, and he's like, you're screwed. That gave me goosebumps. And I liked how she kind of spared Anderson. I mean, she was being smart about it, even though she was cruel. And I also found out something interesting about this movie is, so it had the director, but then it turns out that Pete Travis directed Dredd. But it turns out now that Carl Urban came out saying that Alex Garland, the guy who directed Ex Machina and Annihilation, which are two fantastic movies, and we've potted about both, I believe.
Just brilliant
movies. They're saying he directed most of this. And while I was watching it, I was pausing shots at just the cinematography and the lighting. And since I've been teaching production design, I've known about it before, but I've really started focusing on it. And so I looked this movie up, right? And the DP who works on this, Anthony Mantle, he won an Oscar. He for Slumdog Millionaire. He also shot 28 Days Later, which I think is amazing. He shot Dogville by Lars von Trier, which is just a chalk lined out set. He did Millions, Slumdog Rush, which I think is beautiful, Trainspotting 2, 127 hours. And he hated DP. He hated 3D. So what he did, he developed a new camera so people's faces in 3D would look better. There's a lot of close-ups in this movie, but it's 3D, and he developed a new camera for that. And they also used a Phantom, which I'm pretty sure he talked to his boy Lars von Trier, who did a movie called Melancholia, which has some of the best Phantom work I've ever seen in my life. But the slow-mo shots in this movie move at, 4,000 frames per second? Just the way that they captured the slow motion. This Dredd 2012, it's a brutal little thing, but it hits really hard on its budget. I mean, they did a lot for $50 million on this movie, and it's a beautiful looking movie. It's a very well shot film.
It's incredible. So I went and saw it with my good buddy Fraser Sweet. How cool of a name is that, Fraser Sweet?
That's a sweet name. That sounds like I don't know.
You could be a pro wrestler with the name Fraser Sweet.
You could be in Seeds of Doubt, but we would hate his name, so we get rid of him because it's like his name's too good.
I think he would be our security officer. He would be he's a big guy. So he would be a big supporter, and he'd be our onboard security.
Sounds great to me. But we went and saw it. Yeah.
We went and saw it like opening night, and because we were all like pumped up about it. And we came out, and the first thing I said to him was this, I said, that is finally a movie that 3D made the movie better.
Yeah.
Because it was different 3D than I'd ever seen before. I said, it's almost like most 3D movies have something popping out at you. This one had depth. You looked into the shot.
Yeah, it wasn't post conversion. It was they shot it on set 3D, and it became a character almost.
Yeah.
This is like a work of art movie. And I know I know a lot of people make fun of that. So there's a shot in the Game of Thrones episodes where people were saying this shot should be taught in every film class, and they were kind of making fun of that. But I think I find this movie so impressive is because it's Dredd, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah. Exactly. Like it was one of those things where like, oh, they're doing a remake of Judge Dredd, or they're making another Dredd movie, a reboot of it, and you're like, I remember I had the same feelings of this when I had with the RoboCop remake, when I was like, I have fond memories of the first one as a kid. I really hope this doesn't this can't be a waste of my time, and it was not a waste of my time. It was incredible.
The one thing I worry though, it only made 13 million domestically, and overall total around the world, it just pulled in 35 million on a $50 million budget. And
yep.
I think a big reason for that is it's so hard R-rated. It is glum.
So do you think this movie does better money after Deadpool?
Yes. I think that, well, all right. Yeah, I mean, well, you know what? Watchmen was out. Watchmen was hot at the time. Constantine was very bleak.
But Snyder was coming off of 300 when he did Watchmen.
Oh, yeah, that's true. He had the hype. He
had that like hype momentum behind him, right?
I don't know how this movie made only 13 million. I really don't. It kind of blows my mind a little bit, but it's become a huge cult classic. And now everywhere you go, you read a movie about wanting a sequel.
Well, and Carl Urban did the thing where he's like, if we sell this many DVDs, we can make a sequel. And he was urging people like, this month, go buy a second copy so we can get Judge Dredd. So I actually purchased 3 copies through my lifetime. I got one for myself, I bought one, and then about 2 for friends for their birthdays. Yeah. So I was like, I've done my bit, Carl Urban. I bought 3 copies of Dredd.
I bought the Blu-ray, lost it, then I bought the digital copy. So I was like,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, but this movie though, man, I totally forgot how beautiful it was to look at. It's incredibly violent. I mean, the gore in this movie is pretty great. And I also thought Olivia Thirlwell. Oh, go for it.
I was gonna say, it's not like glorified gore violence.
It's
like
ugly.
When you watch, for example, when you watch Deadpool and he's slicing people's, and don't get me wrong, I love me some Deadpool, but when he's slicing people's heads off and he's doing his flips, and it's almost like this fun tongue-in-cheek kind of like, oh, haha, this is really gory, where this was like viscerally uncomfortable gore.
Yeah, and I think the director's good at that, Garland. So in Annihilation, in some of those scenes, just, and like the way he tackles death, almost, sometimes in